This episode contains spoilers. Please listen responsibly. Hello everyone, my name is Jason Ramirez and welcome to episode 2 of The Hit List, a podcast where me and a guest cross out films from our watch list by watching them. I am joined today by indie filmmaker, mentor, and friend, James Couche. Welcome James, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Alright, so James, before we get started, I want to ask you, what are your viewing habits when it comes to streaming services?
So, I'm not as adventurous as I wish I was. I have maybe 1,000 things on my watch list for Netflix alone.
Wow.
And I do my best to at least once a month watch something I've never seen before, but I do have a bad habit of going to some old standbys and diving really deep into TV.
Yeah, I have a very similar habit. For someone that's a filmmaker, and also still learning how to become a filmmaker, I watch a lot of the same old stuff. And that's the reason why I started this podcast, because I want to watch the movies from my list and watch the movies from my friends' list, just so I can get more inspiration from it. So
I feel like this would be a lot easier though if we had almost are you familiar with the Turner Classic Movies Wine Club?
I'm not. Do you mind going over that?
Yes. So I'm a fan of Patrick H. Willems, and he just did a video where he got the TCM Wine Club, where it's like they send you 10 bottles of wine, and each bottle of wine comes with a movie recommendation for something streaming on Turner Classic Movies. And it's like kind of like old stuff and new stuff, like Marx Brothers, there's old school romantic comedies, the breadth of it is really impressive, but it's also this great, hey, watch this. Because if left to our own devices, we do tend to gravitate toward what's most familiar. And if anything, that is a fun way to step outside your comfort zone.
There's a streaming service called Mubi, and kind of like the similar aspect, but they give you all the older classic movies, and it's like a 30-day playlist from what I believe. Each day has a new movie to watch that's recommended for you essentially. And that's something that I've considered to get. However, I don't have the money to afford it just yet. And there's also so many streaming services I want to try out first before I try out Mubi. And yeah, some of the TV stuff I've been watching recently have been after The Office. I've been watching Community as well. I've been watching on Hulu before it was on Netflix.
Love that show.
I love it. And I
just saw the whole thing for the first time, and I kind of wanted to cry when the final episode aired. Oh man.
Yeah,
it's just I forgot how great this show was, and it is probably one of my favorites of all time.
I actually watched it while I was in community college, and I went even further with it because I couldn't find it anywhere online, streaming wise. So I actually rented or borrowed the DVDs from the library. So I felt like Ovid in that sense. I was willing to borrow DVDs from the library to watch it at home.
That is the most community college thing you could have done. Bravo, sir.
Yeah.
I was actually having a conversation earlier. I wish there was a way for these streaming services to recreate the feeling of walking into a video store and just perusing. I had a way of doing things whenever I was a big Hollywood video fan. They had a lot of very kind of out there stuff that was surprising, and I would just walk past all the big new releases because I saw that stuff in theaters, don't really need to see it again, and I would go to the racks of obscurities, and understandably I saw a lot of really crappy movies that way but you're always taking a risk. But there are some cases where I stumbled onto things that just absolutely blew my mind. And also I gained a lot of cool points with the staff. I was normally on a first name basis with them just because it's hey, this guy just rented Six String Samurai. Yeah, that's me. It's hi guys.
Yeah, I think the only way we can probably do that right now during quarantine is to do a VR headset thing. Maybe Netflix could have a VR headset app, and then you can walk around in your own home trying to select movies from different shelves that are not there. That's the closest thing that comes to mind when it comes to that. All right, so the two films that we'll be discussing today are Swiss Army Man, directed by Daniel Kwan and Daniel Schneider. I don't know how to pronounce it. And Daniel Schneider.
Hold on. I don't know. Let me see if I can take a crack at this.
But they're collectively known as the Daniels. That's what I know.
The Daniels.
The Daniels.
So, let's see here. Scheinert. Scheinert?
Shiner.
There we go.
All right, I'm going to try it one more time. So the two films we'll be discussing today are Swiss Army Man, directed by Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert, collectively known as the Daniels, and Pan's Labyrinth, directed by Guillermo del Toro. So Swiss Army Man was on James' list. James, why was this bizarre movie on your list?
So I originally heard about this movie back during its theatrical run. A lot of the people like online who are like, you know, movie analysts and whatnot who I respect, we're just talking this thing up. It was like, oh wow, it's so great. It's so amazing. It's so strange, and that's what makes it so endearing. But it wasn't playing anywhere near me, so I missed it. And then it came to streaming service. It was one of those cases where, oh cool, add this to my list. And then a couple years go by, and it bounces around all the different streaming platforms. And I was recently just going through my list, and I saw this, and I'm like, why haven't I not watched this movie yet? What has been the holdup? Because I've been fascinated by Daniel Radcliffe's post Harry Potter movies.
Right.
I loved Horns. Horns was just amazing WTF of a movie. And I really am. Later this month, I think Guns Akimbo is coming to Amazon Prime, and I'm not going to sit on that one for years. That just like Daniel Radcliffe with guns bolted to his hands. That's just, yeah, he makes really interesting choices, and I gotta respect that.
I see. So I also heard of this movie back in like 2016, and I remember seeing an article where like when it first featured in Sundance, there were some audience members who walked out of the theater after like the first few minutes of seeing the body, Daniel Radcliffe's body character farting out of nowhere. People just like walked out. And if I were in the audience and I saw that, I probably would have been one of the people to walk out, because I probably wouldn't understand what it was until seeing the whole thing. So,
Harry Potter doesn't fart. This is not cool.
Yeah, but he's not Harry Potter anymore, so.
Oh, no, not at all.
All right, so did you enjoy this movie?
Yes, but it took a second to get my head around it. I remember distinctly watching it, and within moments having to realize, like, okay, there's nothing realistic about this. Don't approach this with that cynical lens of reality. You know, the minute he uses a farting corpse as a jet ski, it's like, I should have just turned that off. And I wonder if I had watched this before the current time, before the world decided to just like, you know, become a trash fire, would I have had an easier time accepting it? But I think what the movie really dug its hooks into me about halfway through, when it started to really lean into this strange, almost fairy tale, when any conceit of reality was just thrown out the window, and, you know, what little part of my brain was still holding on just like gave up. Like that, like hanging from a cliff, there was that last finger still holding on for dear life, and then it was just like, nope, I'm done. Let go, fall into it.
Yeah. So I actually have my own interpretation of the movie after watching this whole thing, and for one, it's just like it's about like a guy teaching a dead body about civilization and life, even though he is kind of disillusioned by his own life and civilization. So my own interpretation of the movie is that it's a satire. It's an independent movie satire of independent movies. In the end of the movie, when like they watch the dead body fart away into the sea, each of their reactions is a embodiment of like people's reactions to weird independent movies. So like there's one that's like amazement, there's one that's like laughter, and there's one that's like confusion, and then one that said, and like the woman who was essentially stalked, she said, "What the fuck?" So that's my.
There's your one F-bomb.
There we go. She literally said that, like, and I was like, oh, and I kind of like got that for like the midway for the movie, because like I could kind of see like how a lot of the elements you see throughout the film you kind of see in all independent movies or of coming of age from films. Essentially, where like when there's like the whole montage of them becoming more friendly to each other, and like there's like the music itself was just also, I think, a parody, because it was just like things that they were saying anyway. I can't remember what the song was saying, but like it'll be like water from the mouth, something that was very strange, and they made it more magical through music theory.
Oh yeah, it was great because the soundtrack. No, that's a really good read on that. like you went to a metatextual level on that. But yeah, I love the fact that the soundtrack was literally just like the lyrics were about what's happening. They did something similar in Black Dynamite where the music's playing, and if you listen to the lyrics, they're literally describing what's happening in the scene. And yeah, I kind of looked at it, and maybe it's just the headspace I was in at the time. I saw the metatextual stuff, but I also saw the more overt stuff. And how a lot of it was this guy who, like, first of all, the movie, the star of the movie is Paul Dano playing the most Paul Dano role ever. And he's clearly got serious issues even before he finds himself marooned on a deserted island. And it feels like through teaching the corpse of Daniel Radcliffe about how society works, the world works, he's almost kind of serving as his own therapist. Like, he's projecting a lot of his own issues, a lot of his own anxieties and pain and fear onto this other person, and in trying to help that, and then he is objectively able to work through it by being kind of almost an outside observer.
Yeah, I kind of saw that as well. But like, I didn't really think of it as like therapist. He's just like kind of like reflecting upon his own life. And then like, especially the part when they're in the makeshift bus, essentially. Mm-hmm. And Daniel Radcliffe like wants to like go up to talk to her, but he doesn't know how. And he says, "How come I don't know how to say anything?" And he says, "Yeah, sometimes you don't really know what to say. And honestly, I'm not really that good at this stuff." I'm like, oh, okay. So we're learning more about this character as he's trying to help someone else. Even like in the first part, not the first part, but like when they first started interacting with each other, like speaking, when he starts speaking to the dead body, he says, why do you sound retarded? And we realize, oh, I sound exactly like my father. I'm like, oh, okay, so this guy's got daddy issues. I see it now.
Oh, then you meet his dad, and it's like, oh, this guy's a real turd.
Yeah.
And you hear about his upbringing. Yeah, it was interesting because, you know, I think pretty much anyone can relate to the idea, the feeling of like feeling worthless, feeling like unwanted, and it's hard to work through that. I think everyone feels that way, but some of us get stuck there. And it seems like Paul Dano's character was really stuck there. And it's strange that by being out in the woods with his imaginary, not imaginary corpse friend, it allowed him to work through things that he couldn't work through when he's surrounded by other people. And that because there is the point in the movie where he is surrounded by other people, and suddenly you're reminded like, oh no, the world and society is a very callous, very uncaring place. Like there was this like lack of sympathy toward his situation almost entirely. And you know, if anything, it was jarring because you've gotten to be it's just these two characters who, you know, you have this Daniel Radcliffe's corpse is not he doesn't judge Paul Dano the way that the rest of society would, and it kind of made it easier to work through this stuff. But the minute he steps back in, it's like suddenly like Dano is an outcast. He's weird. He's, you know, treated kind of badly by his father. He's kind of exploited by the media who are just like, all right, we're going to interview you. We don't even know your real name. And the fact that there was a lot going on there on a textual level and metatextual level. It's really, I think it's a really successful, really good movie for that. And I was actually pretty amused by the weird Shane Carruth cameo at the end. Did you catch that one?
Which one?
So at the very end of the movie, you see the coroner walking around saying stuff, and Paul Dano's like, "Hey, do I recognize you?" It's like, that's Shane Carruth, the guy who directed Primer.
Oh, really?
It was just this weird, like, and he was in literally like a scene. He had like 3 lines, and it was kind of hilarious. Like, oh God, this, you know, it's felt like a shout out to all the indie film fans in the audience. Like, you guys will get this. Everybody else will have no idea what's happening.
Yeah, I had no idea what happened there either. Because I was like, where does he know him from? Yeah, that was like that. I completely missed that. And also because I'm not that big of a fan of indie movies, so I probably wouldn't have gotten that at all.
For shame.
Yeah, even though I am an independent filmmaker, I'm not that. I'm more into like big budget Hollywood movies, remakes, and everything like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you ever want to twist your brain into a knot, go find Primer and watch it. And if you feel that your brain is not sufficiently pretzel shaped, then go watch Upstream Color, which is the follow-up he did.
Yes, I've seen Primer. That's like, I actually like that movie, and it really confused me.
I love the diagrams online trying to explain time travel. like, okay, so this is how it works, and he has to turn this on now, this point, and then his, he has to walk away, and then the fungus forms, and you're back in the past, and you need to buy shares of Apple in the 90s. It's out there. It's really out there, but it was ballsy.
Yeah, that reminds me of like that one episode from Community where the dean is trying to write time travel story screenplays, and he says at the end of the show, end of the episode, he's like, time travel is just really hard to write about. I wish this hoodie was a time hoodie. Speaking of all this, do you think you should have seen this movie sooner?
Yes. I think I should have seen this movie before the world went straight to hell, because like you have to be in the right headspace watching this. And after all that's happened, it was actually difficult because my brain was actively resisting getting into that headspace. I think if life was a little bit more carefree, then I could have watched this and really enjoyed it. And I did. I ultimately did really enjoy it. I think I would have just been able to, get out of that cynical headspace sooner. I feel like I spent a little bit too much time there, and it bums me out that I clearly was missing some great stuff because my brain was pushing back against it. How about you?
I liked it enough. I could have lived my life without needing to see this movie, honestly.
Yeah, it's hardly an essential movie. It was hardly an essential movie for me. Like, I enjoyed seeing it. I probably would have enjoyed seeing it in the theater when it came out if I had the opportunity. But it was hardly a life-changing film. But for some people it is. I think maybe for people who might struggle with depression and anxiety, that's the kind of movie that would really speak to you because, having been there like everybody else, it spoke to that part of me. And in that regard, it was actually pretty powerful. And it was also really funny because the magical multi-utility corpse, and every time we discover a new thing the corpse can do, it's just, it was this weird rush to see the corpse can do this now. And he can use it. It's like the use of the boner compass was that's a stroke of genius. And I think they should have an Oscar category for that.
Like strangest body utility.
The Boner Compass Award for movie ingenuity, for cinematic ingenuity. and it's literally a bust of just that. You get like a golden Boner Compass statue.
Yeah, we've spent this whole time discussing the symbolism and the morality of the story, and we never even discussed the Swiss Army Man. Essentially, why is he called a Swiss Army Man? My favorite tool is when he finds out he can snap his fingers and create sparks, and he uses it to make fire.
Oh yeah,
it just reminded me of Fullmetal Alchemist right there. I'm like, oh, there we go. Something I like for once.
It's attaching. I think that was a lot of it. Paul Dano and Daniel Radcliffe were great together. They played off each other perfectly. But yeah, finding out all the weird powers that the body has, and how Paul Dano goes about using those powers to stay alive. I think that was the real draw. It gets very emotional, but it's ridiculously funny. Especially whenever they're exploring all the weird utilities, then the way that Dano uses this magical corpse to stay alive in the wilderness.
In fact, speaking of magical corpse, that just reminded me of Watchmen, the graphic novel, when there was a comic within a comic. Did you ever read Watchmen?
I have not, but I do know about what is it, the Black Trawler? I
think it's the Black Marauder. Let me look it up real quick. Tales of the Black Freighter.
There it is. It was neat how the Watchmen TV show did that because they had comic book movies. Have you seen that show?
HBO's Watchmen?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't remember what you said, the comic book movies.
Yeah, so when she picks up the videotape.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's so there are movies, really cheap, crappy movies based on comic books in that world. So it's neat how they built on that, the comic within a comic, where it's a TV adaptation of a comic that involves a TV adaptation of the superheroes or of comics within the universe.
But back to the Tales of the Black Freighter, because if you guys aren't familiar with Watchmen, Watchmen's comic within a comic, in the comic book, the graphic novel Watchmen, there's a character reading a comic within that comic, It's called Tales of the Black Friar, and it's about this one man who's like shipwrecked because some pirates took over his ship, and he's like the sole survivor of like the whole ship, and he uses the dead bodies of the people on the ship to create a raft and also an oar to get back to get back home essentially. And when he goes home, he sees what he thinks is someone attacking a woman, but it's really just a guy on a date with another woman. And like when they see him, he went from like civilized Englishman into like a guy using dead bodies as weapons.
Oh God, that's Frank Miller is a disturbed man.
Oh yeah, but like I appreciate him.
Or was that Alan Moore?
I think it was Alan Moore. Yeah, Alan Moore.
Yeah,
Alan Moore.
Alan Moore, also strange man, insane beard. I love it.
And now a word from our sponsors. Now back to the show.
So Jason, your movie was Pan's Labyrinth, and that's way older than Swiss Army Man. What took so long?
So I became a fan of Guillermo del Toro after watching Crimson Peak back in like 2016, back when it came out. And I watched some of his shows on Netflix. There's a show called Troll Hunters on Netflix that I do recommend. It's a kids show, but like there's a lot of fantasy elements that I do enjoy from the show. And the reason why I had Pan's Labyrinth on my list is because I want to like explore more. I want to like I want to see what was so exciting. The reason why it took so long is because I just was watching other movies at the time, and it just like it takes me a while to get into movies that are like foreign movies. Even though I speak Spanish, I was raised in a Spanish speaking household. I'm more used to watching English movies in a way, American movies. But like now I'm trying to like get more into like foreign movies.
I'm gonna slightly date myself. I saw Pan's Labyrinth when it came out in theaters. And it was the movie where I realized that Guillermo del Toro is not just a good director, he is a legendary director. Because up to that point, I saw Blade 2 and thought it was really good. I saw the first Hellboy, thought that was really good. But it was Pan's Labyrinth where it hit me like, man, this guy's incredible. Like this is just amazing. And after that, I've basically, with the exception of Crimson Peak, I've seen every Del Toro movie in the theater. But the fact that he brought that same Pan's Labyrinth energy to pretty much everything he did afterward, Hellboy, The Golden Army, Pacific Rim, The Shape of Water, it feels like Pan's Labyrinth was the point when he really became butterfly form, or is this Guillermo's final form? Or does he have more afterwards?
Yeah, and the thing I like about this movie is that I like these type of movies where like the children are like exploring both the real world and the fantasy world at the same time. And this movie also came out the same year as The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which I heard that he was actually asked to direct that movie, but he chose to do Pan's Labyrinth instead, which I appreciate him for doing. And like both movies, Chronicles of Narnia, the first one, and Pan's Labyrinth, explore the same concepts of like children like going through like a war-torn world. Both of them like around World War II, and they go to like the fantasy world to like grow, and only one of those movies is happier than the other.
Yeah, they could not have been more different. But I remember watching it, and right off the bat, you're struck by it's a gorgeous film. It is positively gorgeous.
Right.
The cinematography, production design, the locations. And I love the fantasy aspect of it. I love the fact that we saw it through a child's eyes, but it wasn't necessarily a kid's movie at all. It was way, way too violent to be a kid's movie. Even the villain, was he a general, right?
Captain.
The captain, it's very rare to see a villain that is so genuinely terrifying as the captain. And that was impressive.
I found myself, as I was writing notes throughout watching the movie, I wrote like 5 different comments throughout the movie. The first one was like, the captain is rude. The captain is a bastard. The captain is so violent. And what else? That bastard captain. That coward captain. Like all these like separate moments throughout the film were like, oh yeah, this guy, I really don't like. I don't think I ever disliked the villain so much as I did the captain, which means the actor did a very good job of portraying him.
It says a lot that he is scarier than the monsters she encounters.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like those monsters are so cool looking, but they are nowhere near as terrifying as this very real world villain. Because Spain lived under fascism for decades, and when the movie ends and the captain is like shot in the face, which is a really cool and gruesome effect, that was just a small victory in a much larger campaign to basically fight back against just this fascist government that was just oppressing the people.
Yeah, that's something to really like learn history. The thing I love about movies is that you can sometimes learn history alongside it. So like last week when I was discussing with Albert the Foreigner, I learned a lot of like Irish history about the IRA that I didn't know about. I didn't even know about the IRA existed. And with this one, I didn't even know about the Spanish Civil War or like the fascist government that they lived under. So that's why I'm watching these movies. So like maybe there's a little history thrown in there on the side as you watch them.
Oh yeah. Well, the cool thing, I mean, not just Del Toro, but could you imagine this felt like if Harry Potter went really, really dark.
Which I wish they did.
Yeah, like looking back, like my favorite Potter movie is the one directed by Alfonso Cuarón. And the reason he took the job is because Del Toro shamed him into doing it. Like they offered it to Cuarón and he's like, I don't want to direct one of these kids movies, because up to that point they were just kids movies. Del Toro shamed him like, how arrogant are you to turn these movies down? You need to make this or I will never let you live it down.
Wow.
But seeing stuff like Pan's Labyrinth, like, you know, like Shape of Water, like Pacific Rim, it makes me sad that we never got the Del Toro directed Hobbit movies. That every time it's like, man, you know, this could have been amazing, and Warner Brothers just found a way to screw it up.
Yeah, that's what made me more sad, because like I'd seen the Lord of the Rings movies, but I actually read The Hobbit more than once. I actually like read The Hobbit back when I was 6 years old, and I didn't even know it was connected to Lord of the Rings back then. But like I'll like reread it like every few years. And so when I learned it was becoming a movie, I was excited. And when I saw it was like what 3-4 movies. How many movies was it?
It's 3.
It was 3 movies. I thought that was like very strange. Like, how are you going to stretch out a short book? And I thought, oh, that's how you can do it. With money in mind.
So there's this thing called the Silmarillion, and we will mine it for content and just pad this story out.
And like there's also like the unnecessary romantic relationship between the dwarf and the elf. And the actress who played the elf, I forgot her name, is it Evangeline
Lily Tomlin? No.
Let me look it up real quick.
So the power of IMDb. She was an Ant-Man and Wasp. How am I forgetting her name? She is Wasp. Evangeline Lilly.
Evangeline. Okay, yes, I was right.
So close.
Yeah, so like Evangeline Lilly, she like got signed on into the movie with the hope of like not doing like a romantic relationship arc, and there was. So unfortunately for Evangeline, and also for everyone else who wanted to see decent movies. But yeah, like when I searched searched it up on Wikipedia real quickly, I kind of saw that like Del Toro was originally attached and like his departure. I'm like, oh, so we really could have gotten like a great movie if Del Toro was still on it.
So I've gotten to learn a bit more in depth what happened. Del Toro was working on that, and they were about to start shooting, and then something happened. Del Toro is like off the project, and they brought back Peter Jackson, and Peter Jackson just had to cobble 3 gargantuan films together in just a span of a couple months. And if anybody's interested in seeing in depth why those movies are terrible, Lindsay Ellis has a 3-part series about The Hobbit and how they screwed over Del Toro, they screwed over Peter Jackson, they screwed over the actors, and they screwed over the New Zealand film industry to make 3 movies that nobody likes. But I love the fact that Del Toro, he wanted to direct Pacific Rim 2. They took it away from him.
Oh, man.
And as a way of like dealing with the grief, he goes and makes The Shape of Water and wins a Best Picture Oscar.
That's great.
Yeah, literally every time you take away something that Del Toro starts, it doesn't turn out well. I mean, the Hellboy reboot and Pacific Rim 2 are not fondly remembered. And I think a lot, you know, and you can watch them and you can see like, okay, you know, you see what he brings to the table in his absence.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of like his own projects, I did discuss Troll Hunters briefly. Have you seen Troll Hunters? Do you know about Troll Hunters?
I haven't seen it. The only thing I know about it is, I guess there's a story from, they brought in Del Toro to come in, like help with the editing. And he would gleefully delete entire scenes that required hours of manpower to put together and edit. And he would do it cackling like a supervillain. It's just like, Yeah, this guy sounds amazing. But yeah, like, so you've seen it.
Yeah, I've seen. There's like a whole story. There's like a whole universe attached to it because all it takes place in the same town. It's called the Tales of Arcadia. So like the Troll Hunters was the first one. Three Below is about the aliens that like gets crash land onto like that town. And the third one is not out yet. It's gonna be based on wizards, which were introduced in Troll Hunters. So I actually like Troll Hunters, but it was still very much like a kids show. But there were like a lot of elements of like fantasy, like you can kind of see he brought into it because like there were elements of horror brought into it. There were villains that are like they were like really scary, like oh he's about to kill these kids. And one of my favorite things when I was like watching Pan's Labyrinth is the whole adventure aspect that you kind of see in there, and the fact that like the chalk that she uses to create the doorway, there's like a similar magical item that they use in the show to enter the world of like of the trolls, to enter like the troll world. So
Yeah.
That's like the things I see, like oh they use that, oh they use that, and like I think there's like this emphasis on like using books for like knowledge or whatever, even though books are knowledge. They emphasize like learning and reading a lot in Troll Hunters, and the creatures that they make in Troll Hunters, you kind of see like some Del Toro influence in there. And also, like, do you remember like in the Labyrinth, there's like this huge arc?
Yeah.
That arc is like in the first season of Troll Hunters. It's not the same arc, but like the villains are trying to like recreate the arc essentially to bring back an evil overlord, whatever, to take over the earth. So it's just a lot of things that I kind of see like influences from Pan's Labyrinth and other like Del Toro's like work into like the show.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about him. He's got this very distinct style. You can see it throughout all of his films, and he made giant monster movie with Pacific Rim. He made a gothic romance with Crimson Peak. He made just this almost 50s sci-fi movie with The Shape of Water. And it, no matter what genre, it always feels very Del Toro.
Exactly.
And something I've noticed with Pan's Labyrinth and also Shape of Water is this established kind of like normality is the real villain. In Pan's Labyrinth, it's the captain who is an authority figure, and in the beginning of the movie, he's kind of viewed as almost benevolent, like he married her mom.
Yeah.
In The Shape of Water, it's the government and Michael. Oh God, what's his last name? Michael. Yeah. And he is just kind of like, he represents the U.S. government. He is the normal evil. And a lot of the heroes, a lot of the protagonists are kind of oddballs. They're children, they're outcasts, they are mutant fish guys. And you do kind of see that in his most personal films. I
might actually like watch some more of his movies. I tried watching Shape of Water on demand, but like it was riddled with commercials, so I couldn't watch it just yet.
Yeah, wait until you can see that from start to finish. That was another one I saw in the theater, and yeah, it is just gorgeous film. What's really funny is his go-to guy,
Doug Jones.
He played the faun in Pan's Labyrinth, but the thing is, he doesn't speak a word of Spanish. He didn't know what anyone was saying to him. He would just kind of like keep to himself, and he had to learn all of his lines phonetically, and also wear all that makeup and the foot gear to create the hooves.
Yeah, I read that as well on Wikipedia, but like still he was still voiced over with another voice actor, but the voice actor was able to use like his like pronunciation to better say the words essentially. So props to Doug Jones for like doing his best to actually learn it. Yeah. But essentially it was just like overdubbed. I
feel bad for him because like he was dubbed over in almost everything. It wasn't until Star Trek Discovery that we got to hear his real voice.
He's like almost Eric. I didn't even know until after doing research before I started recording today, is that he played the faun and the monster thing inside like the hallway. I forgot the name.
Oh, the eyeball thing.
Yeah, the eyeball thing. He played both of them, and I didn't even know it. But like, how could you know that? Honestly,
the man's incredible. Going back to the way the movie looks. Because I loves me some cinematography. It says a lot that Guillermo just continued working with that DP forever, and now that guy is the guy shooting the John Wick movies.
Really?
Yeah, so the John Wick movies, when the sequels rolled around and they had more money, one of the first things they did was they hired this dude. That's why the first movie looks good, but then the sequels just look otherworldly.
Right. Yeah, I noticed that, but I didn't know that was why. Because I thought the first one was intentionally looked like that. And like, yeah,
Yeah.
the second two, they look really better. Story could have been better, but it looks really nice.
Oh yeah, they became that was the minute that the movie stopped feeling like reality and became like, nope, this is fantasy. This almost inhabits the same space as the movie wanted. But yeah, like everything about Pan's Labyrinth just it hit. It all worked. It was all fantastic. And that like I almost felt bad like, oh, Swiss Army Man. It's not terribly essential. Pan's Labyrinth is essential. It is, if you love movies of any kind, you should watch it. If you can't handle it because subtitles, then learn to read faster because it's that good.
Or learn Spanish.
Or learn Spanish, whatever works. So, did you enjoy the movie, and do you think you should have seen it sooner?
I very much enjoyed this movie, and I definitely should have seen it a lot sooner. Because I've had it on my list forever, but I was just like, I got lazy. I didn't want to get into the mood or watch it or whatever. I'd much rather like watch shorter movies. But this one I really should have watched sooner because I love like fantasy elements in like stories. Like kind of like, how do you say, fantasy realism? Is that, I forgot the genre name, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, now that you've seen this, do you feel like it's kind of like maybe altering your viewing habits?
Yeah, I am definitely going to consider watching more foreign language movies because a lot of the movies on the list are like American classics and American like made. Not a lot of them are foreign films, even though I know the value of foreign films. So like, I'm definitely going to change my viewing habits and add more foreign films into my list.
Good idea. Good thinking. I've been into foreign films for a long time. In the early 2000s, I was importing DVDs so I could see Battle Royale a decade before it ever came out here.
Oh yeah.
And I got into the habit of just like, I'll import this because I don't know when it's coming out in the US or if it's going to come out in the US. And I just got into the habit of that. So subtitles don't really bother me. Sometimes having to fumble through menus that are in other languages, that gets to be tricky, but you can pretty much guess your way through it.
So it actually reminds me, I have a friend who's going to be a guest on this podcast soon. She said like before like anime got really big in the US, she would have had to import Shonen Jump from Japan. So she would actually like get on the different websites to like actually import it before you could actually just buy it from the US. I'm like, yo, that struggle back then must have been really rough on you older millennials. I don't understand it now. I can't relate.
Yeah, like the struggle was real. Like we could go to like Suncoast Video and they'd have a rack of anime and imported Hong Kong movies, and that became like, oh cool, I'll buy 3 episodes of Street Fighter 2V for like $30. That's like, oh god, the things we put up with before.
Oh,
but
man.
it was cool because there was always that moment where you stumble onto a cool thing, like you stumble onto anime or you stumble onto a Hong Kong action movie and you just go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah,
you know, you see Rumble in the Bronx and suddenly like, let's just start digging back into the filmography, and you have these like weird Hong Kong imported DVDs, not DVDs and VHS, where the Mandarin and the English subtitles are burned in and just looks, the picture is awful, the sound is bad, but you still watch it anyway. Now, you know, it's cool because you have actual nice versions of these movies coming out. You have them coming out on Blu-ray. They have alternate cuts showing up. They'll have extra features. They'll as a Godzilla fan, you had the crappy like pan and scan versions. Now I can go out and get a widescreen Blu-ray with nice subtitles and like stereo mixed original Japanese audio and commentary tracks. It's been really cool kind of getting to see that from the breadcrumbs that we used to get, and now we just get so much, and you don't take it for granted because you know what the struggle was.
Okay, we've reached the end of our discussion. James, thank you so much for being here. Before we go, do you want to tell me, were the movies a hit or a miss with you?
Well, I'd say Swiss Army Man was a hit, but it's more of like like a base hit. Whereas Pan's Labyrinth was very much grand slam. Yeah, that one's way out in the stands. It's amazing film.
Yeah, I can differentiate a little bit. I think I've mentioned during the episode, I didn't really care for Swiss Army Man. So that one for me was a miss. And for Pan's Labyrinth, that was like right on target. That was a hit for me. That was like Robin Hood's arrow going through another arrow onto the target hit for me. So where can our listeners find you on social media, James?
So I'm a really creative person, so you can find me on Facebook at James Couche, that's Couche, and you can also find me on YouTube at James Couche, where I've been putting my short films on there since 2005. So I've been there since the start. You'd think I'd be more popular by now.
Yeah, hopefully. Thank you for listening to the Hit List Podcast. If you like this episode, please consider giving us 5 stars and leaving a review. It really does help. You can also follow us on Facebook at The Hit List Podcast and Instagram at _hitlist_podcast. Until next time, cross off a new film from your list. Hello everyone. If you made it this far, thank you so much. This section right here will be my show notes. It won't be like this in the future. I won't place it right after the ending. I just forgot to add this part in during the editing process. So the show notes are just a couple of notes from the episode I felt needed some more clarification, if you know what I mean. And for this episode, there are 2. So first one, James mentioned that the cinematographer for Pan's Labyrinth went on to do the cinematography for John Wick 2 and 3. This is incorrect. There's just some confusion over the facts. So the cinematographer for Pan's Labyrinth was Guillermo Navarro, and he's been a frequent collaborator of Guillermo del Toro with films such as Cronos, The Devil's Backbone, Hellboy 1 and 2, and Pacific Rim. The cinematographer for John Wick 2 and 3 was Dan Lawson, who has also collaborated with Del Toro with the movies Crimson Peak and The Shape of Water. So that's the first show note. The second show note, I mentioned the Netflix show Wizards had not premiered yet. I recorded this episode back in June before it premiered, so that's why I mentioned it hadn't been premiered yet. Since then, I have seen this show and I highly recommend it, and I think it's the best of all of the Tales of Arcadia shows, and I'm really excited about the movie coming out next year that will wrap up the whole story, the whole universe, essentially. It'll be like the conclusion to the Tales of Arcadia. It's called Trollhunters Rise of the Titans, for those of you who want to look into it. And that's it. Those are the show notes for episode 2. Remember to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening. And until next time, cross off a new film from your list.